Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Niomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today, I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and I thought I'd share with you some of the books that I've read over the past year. So I've got a bit of a list here. So if you're watching the video, you're probably going to see me turn from time to time to look at my list because there's so many that I don't remember all of them. But as I read through them, I know the key elements are going to jump out at me. So I don't know how much we're going to get through. I'm going to try and keep this episode to about half an hour. So maybe we'll do a part two. I don't know. We'll see how we go. But I found that there was a company that I started contracting with, and the CEO of that company kind of came up to me and was an avid reader or audiobook listener of books, and would often come to me and go, "Oh, have you read this book? Oh, have you read that book?" And I'm like, no. And at the time, I was just coming out of my psychology degree. So for those of you who don't know, I started my first degree, my HR degree, in 1999, showing a bit of my age here. But I had some personal things that I went through. I ended up having a son in between that, and I stopped for a little while I was raising him while he was little. And then I went through a separation. So then I jumped back into it, and I was working part-time. So I was only studying part-time. Anyway, enough of all of the excuses on why it took me so long, but that's where I was getting to. And it took me 11 years to finish my first degree. So I suppose the story or the theme out of that is never give up. Doesn't matter how long it takes. If you've got a goal, just keep chipping away and you'll get to that goal in the end. So I did that, and about probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, I was kind of itching to get back into something else. So in between that, I did a whole heap of diplomas and Cert 4s and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't mind doing another degree because it's like delivery of babies. You forget what it's like. It's like having toddlers and babies. You forget that how much it takes out of you. So yes, I was like, oh, I want to do another one. And then I decided to do psychology. So I graduated that one in 2020. So about 4 years ago, I finished that degree. And then I went on and thought, and at that point, I just finished, I was speaking with, and this gentleman, he's like, reading books. And I was like, I've just never had time. Like I've always been doing some form of study, and it's always taken up my time. So at that point, I was in a better position. Now, also when I did Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, he often talks about people using time as an excuse. So if anyone says, oh, I don't have the time to do that, and look, I'm still guilty of doing it from time to time, look at me with all these times, I still do it. But usually that's not really a great excuse. Usually that is an excuse, rather. It's not usually fact, because if you really need to get something done, you will find the time. You will make the time to make things happen. Now, that doesn't mean what someone's asking of you is not worthy, but it just might not be a priority in your time allocation. And that's fine, right? We all have different time allocation priorities. So he also talks about, this is Tony, my mate TR. He also talks about allocating net time. So net time is no extra time. So what are we doing when we don't have extra time? Like when we're traveling, when we're waiting for things to come through. Now, there's a balance on this because there is a mindfulness element as well. So we don't want to keep ourselves busy all the time, right? We need to have periods where we're actually sitting in quiet as well. And I'll keep that for another episode, but that's really important for that soul connection. But, hanging out, washing, going for a run, doing dishes or chores around the house, all those sorts of things you could crank into your no extra time. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to start listening to audiobooks because I'm not a sit down and read a book kind of person. And I think that may be a subconscious programming from too much study and reading textbooks and having to take notes that I now kind of twitch if I have to sit down and read a book. But I will definitely do audiobooks. And the key to that though is to, even though you're doing it in your net time, try not to be doing something that's like has too much of a cognitive load, because then you'll be focusing more on the task and less on the book. So I have done that in the past, and I've just had to listen to the book again, right? Because it didn't sink in the first time, and I'd be doing something, I missed what they said, and I was rewinding chapters. But that's okay too, as long as you get through and you get the takeaways that you're looking for. So that may work for you, using your net time to do audiobooks. So the books that I'm about to go through now and chat with you with, I think with the exception of one, I actually got through all of these in audiobook form, which I think is just great. I just had a lady approach me today actually on LinkedIn, one of my LinkedIn contacts rather. And she said, "Oh, Naomi, I've just launched this book. Would you like me to send you a complimentary copy?" And I was just really open and honest with her. And I said, "Look, congratulations. That's like a big achievement, but I don't do book reading. It just doesn't fit into my time priorities. But if you've got it on audio, let me know and I'll go and purchase a copy." Um, but it's strange because I'm even writing my own book now. And yes, I'm writing my own book. Yes, it's the first one is going to be, and I say first one because I'm got a series in my head. This is the next project that I'm coming through. So the first one will be around leadership. And when that comes out, I've actually already planning in my mind how I'm actually going to bring out an audio version alongside the published physical copy as well, because I'm sure there's more people like me out there that would love to get a hold of the audio version. But anyway, let's get stuck into these books. So the first one I wanted to start with is by an author named Adam Hill. Now, Adam and I met on Business Mastery. He's also, I think, one of my early guests on the podcast. So go and find him, have a listen. Him and I, when we met on Tony Robbins' Business Mastery, we're actually, so part of Business Mastery is we did that online because it was still through COVID, and we were put into different groups. So they had different, I suppose, Zoom rooms because there was so many people there, right? So they had about, I don't know, 10 or 15 Zoom rooms, and in each Zoom room, there was like 100 people. Don't quote me on the numbers. But then within that Zoom room, we were got split up into groups of around 5 or 6 for most of us. And in our group, there was four of us. And we got split up into these groups, and we had to come up with a business plan and a business model, and we had to pitch that, and then we had to show the results of what we'd done. And then the winner won a prize. So this is all within the couple of days. I think it's 4 days a business mastery goes for. So I was paired up with some amazing people who I'm still contacts with now. And isn't it amazing how you just don't realize why you're in a room, right? I knew I was in the room to learn. The business mastery is different from Tony's other products and different from his Unleash the Power Within and Date with Destiny and all that sort of stuff. It is definitely about business management. And he has, in this room, I'm not quite there yet, but there's multiple 7 figures sitting in this room. And these are the people that I'm rubbing shoulders with. And so that just expands your mind on what's possible just in itself, right? So it was just an amazing experience. And so then there was the people that I ended up meeting. So it was really great. One of them, though, that I'm going to speak about is Adam Hill. Right. So Adam has also jumped on and helped me out with some of my one-day events. He joined me live in person in one of my one-day live via Zoom at my in-person event, and has also joined me in some virtual events as well as a keynote speaker. And he's absolutely brilliant. I would pitch him to anyone. If anyone's looking for a keynote speaker with a little bit of difference, maybe even get a duo. Maybe get me and Adam. I don't know. Whatever tickles your fancy. But Adam is really great. So Adam's book let's get into that now, right? Adam's book is called Shifting Gears from Anxiety and Addiction to a Triathlon World Championship. So his backstory was a lot of addiction and from anxiety that he was facing, mainly around alcohol addiction, and how he ended up getting to his rock bottom and pushing through. And just listening to his story of him sitting there going, watching the Ironman World Championship and thinking, I'm going to do that. And, having some people around him that really supported him to do that and allowed him to think that anything was possible. So there's really unfit, unhealthy gentleman sitting there on the couch going, I'm going to do that. And it's very easy for people to go, yeah, right. Yeah, right. You're going to do that. But he was surrounded by some greatness and he truly believed that he was going to do it. So he took it step by step, little by little, and he got to the point where he qualified. Round of applause to Adam for the Kona World Championships, the Ironman World Championships. And I think when he actually competed in that, I think that made him in the top one. I think it was the top 3% of elite athletes can get in and the top 1% finish. Now, he didn't have a pole, like a top 3 finish or anything like that, but he finished the race. And, to some of us that, I'm never going to go into a Ironman World Championship. I'm not even into triathlons, so it's just not on my radar. But for some of us, we can actually just imagine there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. So anyway, Adam wrote a book about shifting gears. He's also a Flow Over Fear podcast host, and he does a lot of keynotes around shifting through fear and embracing and using fear to take the next step. Truly remarkable, really great to listen to. I recommend looking him up. So then another one that I bang on about a fair bit is, I'm just trying to find the authors here, The Courage to be Disliked. And anyone who's done programs with me, talked with me, been mentored by me, will hear me spit out this book. It's by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitaki Koga are the authors. And even for me, even though I've worked in the therapy space and I did the psychology degree and I completed my RTT training and rah, it still was a game changer for me. And it showed me how many of our behaviors, especially from a subconscious level, come from a fear of being disliked. And even someone that says that they don't care what people think about them are coming from a place that is a fear of being disliked. So interesting. So if you're really looking at understanding why you do or don't do some behaviors, then this is definitely a book to go and tap into. It is written in a like a transcript kind of format. So if you're reading the book in hard copy, it'll be the conversation between a therapist and a client. Or a patient. If you're listening to it on an audio, it's the same format, but they have a different voice for each one. So for me, that probably worked well because it was a lot easier to pick up where the dialogue was coming from. And the way it works is like the therapist will come up with a concept and then the client or the patient will start asking questions to be able to unpack that. And then towards the end of the book has those aha moments and it's like, oh, that's what you meant with this and that connects with this. And very clever, very cleverly written. The third book I wanted to mention to you is called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And if you've been part of my leadership program or if you're signed into the Ripple Effect in the online portal, in our last session when we talk about leveling up, no, in our session where we're talking about communication, I think, yeah, and having conversations. Oh, I've just got a mental blank. In the program, let's just go there. We actually cover the four agreements, and it's a way, I might be in the mindset one now. I don't know, it's all coming through, but it's basically a way of taking back control of our lives and not being ruled by the things that are happening around us and really getting into that space where we are able to have really good influence or control over our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. And the four agreements, spoiler alert, I'm going to give them to you here now, is always do your best, because if you always do your best, then you don't have regrets, right? And it's a really great space to live in. And if you speak to, you may not be into this, but I am, but if you speak to spiritual mediums, psychics, all those sorts of people that can communicate with people that have crossed or people that are coming to end of life spaces, they will say that the one thing that is constant with all of them is regret. Now, some have very little, some have a lot. But when you're at that space, then there's not much you can do about a lot of the regret you have. So doing your best all the time stops you from having that regret. There's also don't make assumptions. One of the things that we tend to do a lot of is make assumptions, and that can cause a really big effect of our thought patterns and where we sit emotionally as well. I might even do a full podcast on this book because it's so blooming brilliant. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Be impeccable by your word. Don't gossip. Don't talk about people. Don't talk smack about things. Always be impeccable by your word. Sets up a lot of stuff, not just in relationship building, but also in an energy perspective. And don't take anything personally, right? We tend to see a lot of things happening around us and go, oh, it's all about me. Usually it's not, right? It's about that other person. And even if they are going out to hurt you and hurt your feelings and purposely doing that in that space, that's usually still more about them than it is about you. Another good book, I'll go into leadership books in a moment, but another personal growth book I really liked was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. And if you're an audiobook person, it's awesome because he voices it. So it just makes it even better. And he talks about, basically it's kind of an autobiography that goes through most of his life. But I loved the concept of this where he talks about things that might have been red lights, might have been amber lights, but how they turned into a green light. And, different moments he will come to and he will talk about this story and how there's an obstacle and how that stopped him and how this, and then X happens and he'll just purely say green light. Just great. Really related to that book. Really loved it. It was really good. So some of the leadership probably based books that I've read, one of the good ones is Good to Great. If you've got a business, Good to Great is a really great book to read, especially if you've got if you're like a CEO or an exec in a bigger business, it could be really handy as well. So that's by Jim Collins. And in that book, Jim actually has gone in and done research, mostly American-based companies, but top, I was going to say ASX listed, but that's Australian, isn't it? But top listed companies, and had a look at the ones that went from good to great and stayed great. And then looked at the ones that that were never good or never great at all. And also the good to great that went back to good again. And had a look at why. Leadership was a component, but they said that wasn't the biggest component. I'm going to challenge that, Jim, because I think leadership capacity is all that in a bag of potato chips. But I did use his concepts around leadership when I was developing my level 5 leadership matrix. If anyone in my programs has seen that before, that's kind of the inspiration I use for developing that tool. So he speaks about other things as well in the business world that help build a business. Really great. Totally recommend it. Another great book in that leadership business development space is Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. So Dr. Carol Dweck is the person that came up with the concept of growth mindset. She did a lot of studies with children and she looked at the different way they approach things and she looked at how their success came through. And mindset was the foundation of the success. And so she developed that a little bit more. She talks about how we can create a growth mindset. I must admit, though, when I first read the book, I had this moment of going, oh, I've got a fixed mindset. Now, anyone that knows me just is going, no way, Gnomes. You definitely have a growth mindset. But mindset's on a scale, and she talks about that. And there's some areas of our lives that we definitely can show a growth mindset in, and there's some that we may be in that fixed mindset. So it's a really good awareness book of sort of coming into place of like, where am I and what can I do a little bit differently? And I'll tell you some stories that came out of that book in another episode when we get there.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Niomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Niomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgrowconsulting.com.au.
Another good one, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Oh, so many people I know have read that book, and it's a game changer. I use a fair bit of his content in it is definitely the last session of my leadership program and the Ripple Effect leadership psychology program. And that goes around changing habits. And it's a really great book if you wanted to have a read for as a leader for creating change in your team, if you need to, as a mentor. Also, if your team are struggling a little bit, you can give that to them. It's a great book if you're a parent on helping with change with your kids. It's a really adaptable book, and it's a really good one. Another good one was Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and that talks about the different cognition in your brain and whether when we make snap judgments, so when we use heuristics and schemas to actually make decisions rather than actually going through and processing things in the long term, and how that can be helpful to us and how that can actually hinder us as well in different spaces. Adam Grant has a really good book called Think Again. Was another one that I read, and that was about self-questioning. That was questioning yourself on different things and the way that you think and the way that you perceive things. And coming outside of the square a little bit and outside the box. So not quite a spoiler alert, but I think the book starts off with I think it's this book. There was, I think there were firefighters that were dropped off to fight a fire. And one of the things that they're taught the whole time is don't lose your survival kit, right? Like that's going to keep you alive. Don't lose it. So they're on the side of this hill and the fire was coming up the hill and they're trying to run away from it. And he's just said to everyone, drop your kit. And everyone's like, no, we can't drop our kit. And look, I'm paraphrasing, so I could get some of these bits wrong. So please forgive me if I do. But he drops his kit and he runs. And apparently, out of that group, there were some people that didn't survive, and they were the people that refused to drop their kit. And so, over time in our lives, and what this represents, I'm pretty sure it's a true story. And what this represents over our lives is we're conditioned in such a way through our childhood and through a social context and through our schooling and by parents and caregivers and aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters, all that. We're conditioned to have a way or a set belief system about the way things work and about the way we should and shouldn't behave. And as we come into adulthood, that kind of is the foundation. Now, one thing I've learned about people in my years of working HR, safety, business, psychology, RTT, all the rest of it, is we're kind of born a clean slate. We get programmed up. And then somewhere between 30 and 50, we have this moment of going, oh my God, what's going on here? And then we try and deprogram, right? And come back to that clean slate again. So if you're in that space, Think Again is a really great book. Another good one, Skin in the Game by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. That was a really good book. That was one I read early on, and I don't often reference as much as I probably should. Skin in the Game is about getting engagement from people. We ask our team members to step up and to move into a particular space, but some of the times they don't have skin in the game. So when we don't have skin in the game, we're not going to normally go that extra step or that extra mile, right? So he talks about, as a leader, creating spaces where we can give people skin in the game. How do we set up that extreme ownership in the people in our team and also in ourselves? Because sometimes we don't have extreme ownership. We're very happy to go and point the finger and blame everyone else or everything else for the things that go wrong instead of standing up and just owning it. And one of my guests, Amy Jacobson, who's an emotional intelligence specialist, I love the way she says it, is like, own your shit. And so this book talks a little bit about that as well, with that skin in the game and extreme ownership. Okay, we've still got a little bit more time. What else have we got? Here's a book that's a little bit different. It's called Journey into Dreamtime by Auntie Munya Andrews. And this is written by an Aboriginal lady. And it's a really good book around cultural awareness. So if you're looking at learning a little bit more about culture and Australian culture and where that sits, then I would definitely recommend having a read or a listen to this book. Dr. Auntie Munya Andrews is also quite active on LinkedIn and is the CEO founder of Evolve Industries, Evolve. Might have to look that up if you look her up. But let's just go Evolve. And they do a lot of cultural awareness training. So I have jumped into a little bit of their stuff. I really would love to do more. I think that's an area I'm really lacking in, of understanding. I understand people, but I have now got this passion of wanting to dive in and understand the cultural aspects of people, not just the brain aspects. So, great book if you're looking for a bit of space in that session, in that space. There's also another great book called The Diamond Cutter. Now, this one is a little bit different, a little bit unique. It's by Feshi Michael Roach and Lama Christie. And this one is about a diamond cutter, right? But it's more of a kind of a leadership slash business based book. And it's about how he started as a diamond cutter and then how he actually went into the diamond cutting business and actually started running his own. I'm not quite sure if it's a true story or if they've used it and adapted it, just to tell a story, but it was really good. And it really connected with a lot of those things that, those belief systems that I have around energy as well, and reciprocity and those sorts of things. And so it really did connect with me. And it showed how you can be successful but also be a good person. And I think traditionally, I know when I was growing up, I was kind of told, I was in a middle class, low to middle class family that were just workers, strong union activists. And I was kind of told that anyone that had a business was a capitalist and that they were mean and nasty. And if you had money, you're terrible and you were like a horrible person and all of those sorts of things, which was programmed down generationally. It's nothing, my parents aren't nasty people, but that's just what was programmed to them, and that's what became programmed to me. So I know when I took my first job in HR, my dad actually said to me, he said, "I'm really disappointed in you." I'm like, "What?" He's really disappointed in you going into HR. And that's because of his union background had led him to believe that HR people were terrible people. And I had to kind of, it goes, HR just want to do the wrong thing by employees and rip them off for the company. I'm like, whoa, 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 hang on. You raised me. Do you think that's how I roll? Right. Um, and in my whole time in HR, for me, it was more about being on the fence and trying to get win-win outcomes for employees and the company. And because what my dad didn't realize, because he came from a different era, was when your employees are actually happy and when they're thriving is when the business thrives. It's not about cutting them off at the knees, right, anymore. I've got so many more. I'll just finish off with. I've got one more I'll finish off with. And I've just got such a big list here. If anyone wants a copy of the list, just reach out. I'm happy to share it. Anyone that's in the Ripple Effect with the online portal, if you go into the bonus material, there's actually a book list there. So you can go through and create your own checklist and go through all the books. Maybe I'll just let some titles off that can probably help you. There's Mental Fitness by Ant Middleton, The Power of Letting Go by John Perkis, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl was also a great one. I liked Ant's book so much, I went again and went First Man In with Ant Middleton. 0 to 1 with Blake Masters and Peter Thiel. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, really great. Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramasanda Uganda. And just one more I'll talk about before we actually go and finish off is The Go Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. And The Go Giver is a really great little book. It's a story, a parable, I suppose you can say, about success and all of the elements to success, how they present as people. So they talk about, the investor, the sharer, the this, the that, and the connector. And I think what really stood out from me was I'm a connector. And there's a lot of times where I actually do have potential business opportunities, but someone pops in my head that I know is better suited. And I'll go, yeah, I can do that for you, but this is your best person. And especially early on in my business, I would have probably not so much other people, but I would sit back myself and then kick myself and go, oh, why did you refer them? That could have been revenue coming into your business. You could use it as testimonials, rah. But that book was really good at showing that the people that are connectors are setting up things for themselves anyway that will come back. So although I might not have got that particular element of work, if they approached me again and I was like, yeah, I can do it, then I would get it. Or I become trusted in networks that the people I refer are really high quality. So people will come to me for advice, or they trust my products even more because I'm not trying to push and sell onto them. So yeah, that was a bit of a game changer for me. It was really good. It just made me more comfortable with the fact that, doing those sort of referral things is really great. So, you might hear my little ad insert in the middle of this podcast, which is voiced by the amazing Michelle Griffiths, who's a TV video actress or actor, and also does voice acting. And I remember being approached by a company and they're like, oh, can you voice our induction for us? You've got a great voice. And of course I could do that. Not a problem at all, but it's not really my core business. And in fact, I've done that for many of the companies I've worked for, being in HR, put together the induction and then I voiced it so that it could be automated. And I've even, sorry, now I'm digressing, but I've even ran into someone that's working at a company I worked at 15 years ago. And when they were talking with me, they were looking at me weird. And then we started talking, and they actually recognized my voice from the induction on the company that I used to work for. So my voice is still rocking around there. But anyway, that's not relevant. So yes, I got approached by this company and I was like, yeah, I can do that. No worries. However, this person is actually trained for it. Like, she is next level and she would do a fantastic job, and referred on Michelle for that work. So, like, this is what we can do in business. We don't have to always be competing with each other. We can actually set up a really good network alliance where we can actually support each other. And no doubt, if someone approaches Michelle for something that probably fits within my realm, she's going to say, hey, I can do that, but I recommend you go and reach out to Niomi. So, yeah, the Go Giver. It's a really good one as well. But I think we've come to the end. Time is of the essence. We've come to the end. I still have a whole heap of other books here. Let me just say a quick couple more. So Rich Brother, Rich Sister, which is Robert Kiyosaki and Aaron Kiyosaki, which is actually, he actually also did Rich Dad Poor Dad. He was the author of that. So he's gone in with his sister as well, and they're actually looking at two different paths to God, money, and happiness. So Robert Kiyosaki is looking at that whole investment financial element, and Aaron Kiyosaki came through more studying as a monk kind of thing and came through to the same element where they had that wealth aspect in their life. Richest Man in Babylon was really good by George Clayson. Chill and Prosper is awesome by Denise Duffield Thomas. I also read Get Rich Lucky Bitch by Denise Duffield Thomas, another great book. Unshakable from Tony Robbins and Jeremy Bobb. And then I've got a whole heap of kind of miscellaneous ones. A really good one was if you're a healer and you're listening to this, The Secrets of Aboriginal Healing. So it's a physicist's journey with a remote Australian tribe by Gary Holtz and Robbie Holtz. And it's about a gentleman who is a physicist who contracted MS, and he went into the Australian outback to actually get healed by an Aboriginal healer. And she did a whole heap of work with him, and there was a lot of emotional stuff that came up, and he went into the outback in a wheelchair and he walked out and walked home from his MS. Mind-blowing. And it just backs up a lot of the theory and stuff behind the RTT as well, and it was his experience and he wrote it, so it's not like anyone else kind of made it up. So it's next level great book. How to Have a Beautiful Mind by Edward de Bono. Lost Connections, so Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression by Johann Hari. So if you do suffer from depression, that's a really great book. It showed me one of the main things they talk about is the SSRIs. Was it the serotonin in our brains, and how they actually came across when they were treating for something different. They actually realized that treatment helped alleviate the depression in people. And to this point, and I don't know if it's changed now, but Johan claims that there's never been a study that's actually shown that someone with depression actually has lower serotonin in their mind, and that there's an issue with the serotonin in their mind. And that's why when people go on antidepressants, if they're not doing some sort of therapy-based work or working on the things that are underlying their depression, that their medication just keeps getting upped and upped and upped, because it's not actually about a lack of it. It's just about the way that the brain receives it and the healing around that. So another great little book, Sapiens, Living the Law of One by Carla Rekak, Close Encounters with Addiction, Gabor Mate, if anyone's into healing and trauma. Everyone knows Gabor Mate. He's great. Hold On to Your Kids by Gabor Mate. That was really great. It's a parenting kind of book. Yes to Life in Spite of Everything by Viktor Frankl, You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and we'll find one more, Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. And Finding the Mother Tree, again, it's a bit of an alternative book. It's not really specifically for leadership or business, but it is a great book, as she was in the tree lopping industry, and she realized that when they lopped down an area and they planted more trees, most of them died. And then she did more investigation. There's actually a fungus that actually lives in the roots of the trees that is actually like a network, a communication and support network. And what it will do is when there's a tree that's unwell, the other trees will actually feed it through this network and help it to get better. So she started suggesting that they leave trees in amongst the clearing, so that the new trees could jump into the network. It was in a very high patriarchic time, so she was dismissed a fair bit, and it was her journey on actually trying to change the industry and create change around that through science, and also being heard as a female in a male-dominated space. So it's not a man basher. It's actually just a real person's journey on those frustrations and those barriers and how she got the mindset to overcome them. So great book. Anyway, that will cover it. I haven't gone through the books that I've read in 2024 because I did this list. I did this list about the middle of 2023. Sorry. So I haven't done the ones that I've read at the end of 2023, but maybe we can do that in another podcast episode. Like I said, if you've got access to the Ripple Effect Leadership Psychology Program portal, you'll actually find this list in the bonus material. But if you want a copy, feel free to reach out. You can email me, admin@getupandgrowconsulting.com.au, and I'd be happy to send one out to you. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and as usual, I really look forward to serving you again in our next episode. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here, and if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.